in Milwaukee, like Arkansas, you are revered, I would assume.
That's my place, Milwaukee, Arkansas. That's right. Love it. Love it. How are you doing?
Sweet. Just fabulous. And I read the book over the weekend, and we will talk about it tonight at 5 and 6. Now, explain to me what's going to happen tomorrow. I wanted to get this read before your event tomorrow. How's that going to work?
You are one of the most talented guys I know. I wanted to take you seriously before we got too far. I was thinking about that when I was stretching today. But tomorrow, I have no idea, Craig. It's a virtual it's a virtual book signing, and I have the script in front of me that we're going to try to execute. And it's pretty much a conversation about the book. People will hopefully buy the book. I sign books in their presence. They ask questions. We have polling questions. It's about a 45-minute session, 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock.
Man, you cover a lot of ground. And by the way, you broke the record for the most acronyms in one self-help book.
Good. That's good, because I was walking this morning, Craig, and I came up with another one. It was so funny. I wrote my wife and said, okay, this is how companies can help young people. And the acronym is E, right? And the F, A, and S, and that is education, access, and support. So
I came up with an acronym for your name. Sidney: sensibility, involvement, determination, neural competency, environmental awareness, and why. I don't know what the why would be. Working out the why. There is no more why.
The why would be why. But I'm glad you read the book. I did cover quite a bit in the book. It's kind of.
Do you said stretching? Do you stretch and walk every day, or what's your exercise routine during COVID?
I walk just about every day, but I don't necessarily stretch every day. But today I had a little extra time before I came on with you, and I said, let me just go down and just clear my head and stretch a little bit. But I try to walk every day. I walk Two Rivers because I'm in Little Rock quite a bit. Love Two Rivers. My favorite place.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's one of my favorite places, anywhere to walk. And then, of course, today I had the luxury of being on Lake Michigan walking Dallas a lot. So walking is kind of what I do for cardio.
Well, Denver Peacock said, or sent me the email about your book, and we talked about it at the station. We wanted to do something with it. And I said, great, Sidney's written a book. And then I look on the back. No, this is your 8th book.
Number 8.
Are people surprised to hear that you've written 8 books? Not to take anything away from your intellect, but you're known for your basketball, not your books. But this is your 8th book.
I know. The question is, nobody knows about my books, but no one reads my books.
I did.
Yeah, thank you. Unless people I do a lot of workshops. So it's number 8 for me. And every time I have a theme, or maybe I have a subject that I want to focus on for the year, I come up with a book. My latest book was called No Risk, No Reward. That came out last year, right. Kind of how you reinvent yourself. And so this diversity, equity, inclusion book, it was transformed from a relationship book, actually, a book about emotional intelligence and relationships. And then when these incidents started to happen, I was like, okay, what can I do? What can I do to help? And that's where we sort of transition into this diversity, equity, and inclusion based on building solid relationships.
Well, it covers a lot of ground, and it is current. I mean, you're talking about George Floyd. You're talking about COVID-19. This one must have just blown up in the last 6 or 8 weeks.
It really did. It started changing because so many things were happening so quickly. And Craig, the thing we have an advantage, we've lived through all of this. It's like we lived through it. Here it goes again. And that was a big advantage because I could actually draw upon some of my experiences when I was younger. And it's like, well, are we still back in the 60s? Or are we in 2020? It was one of those kind of scenarios. And I felt thoroughly challenged by the protests and everything people were saying to do better, individually to do better, individually to hold people more accountable and to be bolder in the sense that I might take.
So this book was taking action instead of sitting on the sideline watching it unravel on television.
I'm an action person, and everyone can do their thing however they would like. Some people can talk about it, some people can be about it. I'm more of the one that I want to be about it. I want to challenge people to be better. I want to challenge myself, first of all, to have more awareness, more sensitivity, more empathy on this subject, and try to bring people along for the ride without indicting them. I know sometimes you have to be a little harder, as you know, when you're talking about subjects, but certainly you don't want to make someone feel like they've done anything wrong. All that matters is recognition and action and moving forward.
Well, you invite people to help write the book. This is a workbook. You've got areas where you tell people to list the times that such and such happened. And it almost begs, Sidney, for someone writing a journal. Do you write a journal?
I don't, but my journal is in my little pea head all the time. Seriously, I'm always writing my journal in my head. And I think a lot about concepts and how I can get better. But this book was certainly designed to make people reflect on where they are and where they can be and where they're going. And that's very important during this journey of diversity, equity, and inclusion, is the awareness, first of all, then the action, and then the accountability. And that's what I tried to do. And also I had people to write confessionals about things they've experienced. I thought that gave the book a lot more richness than it would have had otherwise. I didn't want to just be preaching at people, but I wanted to take from some other individuals' experiences.
Well, that was my next question. You have other people involved telling their stories, and if this book is about inclusion, it's only natural. How did you select these people? There are about 5 or 6 anecdotes that are in that book. How did you find them?
There are 8 people. Mine is number 1, and these are mostly friends. And as I was talking about when George Floyd happened and we started talking about the issues, I had a number of white friends that wanted to do something to help. They wanted to understand what they could do. They wanted to be more sensitive to what was going on. And as we started talking, I realized they wanted to know, but they really needed additional insight, but their insight was valuable. So what I said was, I'll tell you what, why don't you just write what you feel? And then I will put it into my book, and maybe someone else can identify with where you are. And that's how I selected the individuals, based on relationships, friendships, and I tried to have some diversity. Certainly was a big part of who I chose.
And that comes across, Sidney, in their stories. There is one phrase in here I have yet to see in all this discussion of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, and you talk about Black privilege. Explain that.
I know I wanted to push the envelope on that, because a lot of times we use white privilege as a way to indict individuals, and we haven't done a very good job of explaining what that means. White privilege, what does it mean? And then I started thinking about, I was talking to a friend, Craig, and he was talking about white privilege, and he was pretty privileged. And I said, now, hold on now, so-and-so, you have to understand that we are really Black privilege. And then that's when I started thinking about that particular tagline. And I said, because we have actually been enabled and helped by situations of people that are not like us. They have exposed us to different things and given us access to areas that we would not have had access without that relationship. And since we are Black privileged, sometimes we think we understand the struggle, but we don't understand the struggle in some areas because we have certain access that others don't have. So it really challenged me to first of all, look at Sidney and to see where I was, and to understand that white privilege is a good thing, because it can be used to advance the cause of people in general. And that's the point I want to make with those statements.
To observe it and to work with it and use it to your advantage, while also helping the person who may, in some ways, feel guilty over the fact they've got white privilege, which I think is the definition of a liberal.
There you go. I know you. I got you on that one.
Yeah. Of all the principles you have in this book, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to know, what is the one principle you think helped you in basketball, in high school, college, pro, to exceed like you did? Because you don't have an NBA body now. Sidney Moncrief of 1980, when did you graduate? 80?
80.
The Sidney Moncrief of 1980 did not have the body that the NBA players have now, which are more like tight ends. You were a split receiver. What there had to be some element in this book that has been with you all your life. What would you say it would be?
I think the concept of, when you talk about the 5 components of emotional intelligence, which would be self-awareness, it would be certainly self-regulation, it would be discipline, motivation, it would be social skills, and it would be empathy. I really rely a lot on those 5 components of emotional intelligence. And the one that really hits me the most is really discipline, the discipline and motivation part of being able to excel outside of what you probably would have otherwise. And just the order and the routine that I was given from the time I was a little kid with my mom and my stepfather and my family. And then I went to Hall High School, Coach Elders, routine, procedures, discipline, Coach Eddie Sutton, routines, discipline. And that has followed me throughout my life. And that was probably the biggest, the most important principle of the entire book that I think reflected on my life.
Well, it obviously worked, because when I think of you playing, it was always with dignity. You always played with dignity. Now, I'm
Craig,
sure that
Craig, you know what? I want you to go back and look at I'm insulted. Go back and look at a 1985 photograph of me playing for the Milwaukee Bucks. I want you to see the rip, the muscles just bulging, and it was muscle on top of muscle. How dare you talk about?
I'm sorry. I
That's
still
okay.
I still see that bony black hand coming up in the high school finals at Barton Coliseum. All the cluster, the scrum around the basket, and there's this bony white arm coming up over everybody with the ball. And
That's me.
that's always will be you. I'm sorry. God, I love you. Now you're going to take the book, and what will you do? This is begging for journaling, and also begs for a workshop, which, and looking at it, all the other books do too. But are you going to go on the road and do workshops off this book?
Yes. Our biggest, well, that's what we do for a living. We're a people development company, and we do workshops on a number of different areas, team enhancement being one, workplace readiness. And we've done diversity, equity, inclusion. So it's not anything new for us, but we want to expand it. And Craig, we want to not only go to companies, we have a concept that's coming to Little Rock, Central Arkansas. It's going to be a community. It's called We Are One Coalition that we hope to kick off in October. We'll do it in Milwaukee, and we'll do it in Little Rock in Central Arkansas initially. But we get the entire community involved in some type of project or initiative that deals with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm really excited about that project.
Well, include THV in that. We'll be glad to be there with you and give publicity to it. Finally, you are so comfortable around white people because you played for them. You played under coaches. You've been cheered by them. You are our champion. What would you say to white people in regard to Black Lives Matter as a way to approach it, as a way to look at it? As THV 11 gives the headlines and the news stories, what advice would you have for white people who may not understand it?
Yeah, because Craig, I was trying to get my hand around it. Let me just say that. I was trying to get my hand around how it's being described, and it took me a while. And I heard someone say something that kind of clicked for me. And when you look at the Constitution, to where if you were an African American, if you were Black, right, you had to, and they were trying to decide representation throughout the states as far as distribution of funds and how they would be represented. It was like it would take five African Americans to be
right. E1, yeah.
They do. It was so you start thinking of that concept. You think when I was growing up, Craig, when someone murdered a Black person, they would get 6 years. When someone murdered a white person, they would get life. Yeah, all the different things that the value of a life, not to say a white life is less valuable than a Black life, but what Black Lives Matter means is the value placed on a life has been greater for a white than a Black. That's the essence of Black Lives Matter. And it's historical. And people say, well, don't go back to those times. You have to go back because
Mm-hmm.
it's been carried forward for so many years, and now it's time to equal that playing field. So I'm like most people. I hate to say this. I had trouble with the concept because I was saying all lives matter, but then when I started breaking it down about historically what has happened, then I said, oh, okay, I get it. So I would just say, and Jerry Jones used a good word, just have grace and patience with the issue and just try to be fair-minded and just try to do the right thing. Look at people. It's not us against them, it's we. Not us against them, it's we. And that would be my advice.
Oh, that's beautiful, Sidney. And that comes across in the book. Bless you. Let me know what else we can do. And enjoy Chicago. I love
Thank
you.
you. You're my man. I love you too, Craig. Thank
All
you.
right. Look
Bye.
forward to seeing you again.
Okay.
Bye-bye.